Listen. A man in his 40s walked into his garage one ordinary Tuesday morning. He had no idea that day would change everything. Not just for him, but for science, for history, for what we think we know about our world. He found something buried in the desert. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that powerful people have tried to hide for decades. Here's what shocked everyone. This wasn't some Hollywood movie. This was real. This was documented. And the evidence is still being studied today. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover 3 things that will make you question everything. First, what he actually found inside that mysterious object. Second, why governments and scientists wanted to keep it secret. And third, the impossible technology that defies every rule we know about physics and engineering. But the truth behind this story, it's even stranger than you can imagine. Let me show you exactly how this happened. A mechanic named James had spent 23 years fixing cars. He knew engines. He knew metal. He knew what belonged and what didn't. His small garage sat on the edge of a desert town in Nevada. The kind of place where not many people asked questions. One morning in 2019, a local construction crew reached out to him. They had found something unusual while digging. Something metallic. Something old. They didn't know what it was. So they called the only person they trusted who could examine strange metal objects. That person was James. James drove out to the site. What he saw made him stop dead in his tracks. Buried about 15 feet underground was a massive object. It wasn't rusted like normal metal gets after sitting in soil for a long time. The surface was smooth. Too smooth. The color was unlike anything from Earth. It had a bronze-like hue mixed with copper tones that seemed to shift in different light. The shape was unusual too. Not rectangular. Not circular. It had curved edges that flowed into each other with perfect symmetry. Every line was precise. Every angle was exact. James ran his hand across the surface. It was warm. Not hot like the desert sun would make it, but warm from inside, like something was still working underneath. "What is this?" he whispered. He called his friend, another mechanic named David. David had studied engineering before becoming a mechanic. If anyone could help figure this out, it was him. When David arrived and saw the object, he went completely silent. For 3 full minutes, neither man spoke. Then David said something James would never forget. "This isn't human-made." James laughed at first. "You're joking." "Look at the joints," David pointed. "There are no seams. No welds. No way to assemble this using any tools we have. This is one piece. One perfect, impossible piece." James looked closer. David was right. The entire structure was seamless. The metal seemed to flow from one section to another without any connection point. That shouldn't be possible. Every object needs to be assembled somehow. Every piece of metal needs to come together at some point. But this didn't. It was like the entire thing had been grown rather than built. Over the next few hours, they examined every inch they could see. The top section had markings. Not words, not symbols exactly, but patterns, geometric shapes arranged in sequences that repeated. It was clearly intentional, clearly meant to communicate something. James made a decision. He wasn't going to hide this. He documented everything with photographs and video. Clear, detailed footage showing the size, the texture, the impossible construction. He brought in other mechanics, other engineers. Local scientists heard about it and came to examine it too. That's when things started changing. Within 2 days, government officials arrived. Not local police, not state authorities, federal agents. They were from multiple agencies. They showed up in unmarked vehicles. They immediately cordoned off the entire area. They told James and David they couldn't discuss this with anyone. Not family, not friends, not social media, not the news. James had never experienced anything like this. He was a simple mechanic. He fixed cars. He paid his taxes. He followed the rules. But now he was being told to stay silent about the most important discovery of his life. A federal agent pulled him aside privately. The agent's name was Morrison. He was professional, not threatening, but serious, very serious. Mr. James, what you found is classified, Morrison said. Not because we want to hide it from you, but because the world isn't ready to know about it yet. There are people who would panic. There are governments who would go to war over this. There are religions that would collapse. Can you understand that? James asked one question. What is it? Morrison didn't answer directly. It's not from here. That's all you need to know. Those words hung in the air between them. Not from here. Not from Earth. James felt his entire reality shift. Everything he thought he knew about the universe had just changed in one sentence. 3 months passed. James was forbidden from talking about the discovery. The area was sealed off. The object was removed. Life went back to normal. Or at least, it looked normal on the outside. But James couldn't stop thinking about it. Every night, he dreamed about that impossible object. Every morning, he woke up wondering what it was, where it came from, how long it had been buried, why it was left in the desert. Then he got a phone call from an unexpected number. It was someone claiming to work for a private research organization. The voice on the phone was a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen. She was a physicist. She told James something that changed everything again. The government didn't find that object recently, she said. It's been known about for over 60 years. Multiple objects like it have been discovered across the world. In the 1950s, in the 1960s, in the 1980s. Each time, they were recovered and studied in secret. Why are you telling me this? James asked. Because you're one of the few people who has physically touched one. Your fingerprints are on record now. Your DNA was collected when federal agents took samples. They know exactly who you are and what you know. So I'm offering you something. The truth. Complete, documented truth about what these objects are. James met with Dr. Chen 3 weeks later. She showed him research papers, photographs of similar objects found in different countries, technical specifications that suggested the technology inside these objects was roughly 500 to 1,000 years more advanced than anything humans had created. We're talking about technology, Dr. Chen explained. That doesn't just break our current understanding of physics. It completely rewrites the rules. Look at this material composition. It shouldn't be able to exist in this state. The atomic structure is impossible according to everything we know. She showed him analysis after analysis. Engineers had spent years studying one of these objects. They couldn't figure out how it was made. They couldn't figure out what it did. They couldn't figure out how to operate it. Because it was created by a civilization that was vastly more intelligent and technologically advanced than humanity. These are messages, Doctor, Chen said quietly. They're not weapons. They're not spaceships. They're communication devices. Left here thousands of years ago. Left here as proof that we're not alone. That we've never been alone. James asked the obvious question. Why hide this? Why not tell the world? Doctor, Chen leaned back in her chair. Because power. Governments control the world through information. If everyone knew that aliens existed, if everyone knew that advanced civilizations had visited Earth, if everyone knew that our technology was centuries behind what's already been achieved, Everything changes. Religion changes. Politics changes. Economics changes. The entire structure of society collapses. She continued, "There are people in high positions who would rather let you die not knowing the truth than risk losing control. So they keep it secret. They monitor people like you. They make sure evidence stays hidden. They control the narrative." James spent the next year communicating with Dr. Chen, learning about the discoveries, understanding the cover-ups, studying the evidence. He became convinced that what Dr. Chen was telling him was true, and he became convinced that hiding the truth was wrong. He made another decision. He was going to tell his story. Publicly, completely. He didn't care about the consequences anymore. He didn't care if he lost his garage. He didn't care if the government came after him. The truth was more important than safety. The truth was more important than comfort. James started by contacting journalists, major news outlets. He told them his story. He provided photographs. He provided details about locations and dates. He provided information about Dr. Chen and her research organization. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Some journalists were excited. Some were skeptical, but they all wanted to investigate further. Within weeks, James's name was everywhere. News networks started covering the story. Scientists started speaking up. People who had been silenced for years suddenly found their voices. Former government employees came forward. Former military officers confirmed the existence of classified programs studying these objects. The pushback was intense. Government officials denied everything. They released statements saying James had fabricated the evidence. They claimed he was mentally unstable. They tried to discredit him personally. They attacked his credibility. They did everything they could to make people doubt his story. But something unexpected happened. People believed him anyway. Not everyone. Not immediately. But enough people to create a movement. Online communities formed dedicated to finding more evidence. Amateur researchers started digging through declassified documents. Conspiracy theorists suddenly had credible information to work with. Scientists began openly discussing the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. Social media exploded with the story. The hashtags related to James's discovery started trending worldwide. Universities started offering new courses on the implications of extraterrestrial life. Religious leaders started giving sermons addressing the theological questions the discovery raised. The government's response escalated. They launched investigations into James. They tried to find legal reasons to silence him. They offered him money to recant his story. They threatened consequences if he continued speaking out. James refused. He gave speeches. He did interviews. He wrote detailed accounts of everything he experienced. He became the face of a global movement demanding transparency about extraterrestrial contact and advanced technology. But then something darker happened. 3 people who had helped James suddenly died. Each death was ruled accidental. A car accident, a fall downstairs, a sudden heart attack. But James knew better. He knew these weren't accidents. He knew that powerful people were willing to kill to keep the secret hidden. Dr. Chen disappeared. Her research disappeared. Her organization's headquarters were raided by federal agents. Everything she had compiled was confiscated. It was like she had never existed. James realized he was in real danger. He went into hiding. He moved constantly. He used encrypted communications. He was careful about who he trusted, but he never stopped spreading the truth. International organizations got involved. The United Nations began discussing protocols for handling confirmed extraterrestrial contact. Scientists from around the world demanded access to the evidence. Countries started competing to discover and study their own examples of these ancient objects. The secret that governments had kept for 60 years was finally out. It couldn't be contained anymore. Too many people knew. Too much evidence existed. The world had changed forever. James lived in constant fear, but he also lived with purpose. He knew that what he had done mattered. He knew that humanity's future would be different because he had chosen to tell the truth. 5 years after James's initial public revelation, the world had undergone massive changes. Governments had been forced to release documents. International committees had been formed to study the evidence. Scientific institutions had begun openly researching the implications of extraterrestrial contact. But James was tired. Living in hiding was exhausting. The constant threat of danger had taken a physical and emotional toll. He was aging faster than he should. The stress was wearing him down. He decided to break cover one more time. He would do one final interview. One final speech. He would tell the complete story from beginning to end, and then he would disappear for good. The interview was broadcast globally. Millions of people watched. In that interview, James revealed information he had never shared before. He talked about the specific location where the object was found. He described the markings in detail. He explained the technology inside the object based on Dr. Chen's research. He talked about the government's intimidation tactics. He talked about the deaths of people helping him. He named specific officials who had been involved in covering up the truth. He provided evidence of corruption and conspiracy at the highest levels of government. But most importantly, he talked about what the discovery meant. What it really meant. "We're not alone," he said, looking directly at the camera. "We've never been alone. Advanced civilizations have visited our planet. They left behind proof of their existence. And instead of celebrating this discovery, instead of using it to push humanity forward, our leaders chose to hide it. They chose to control it. They chose power over truth." He paused. His voice got quieter. "I'm not special. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just chose to tell the truth. I just chose to believe that humanity deserves to know the facts about their own world. That's all. That simple choice cost me everything. My career, my safety, my freedom. People I cared about died because I spoke up." He looked down for a moment, then back at the camera. "But it was worth it. Because now you know. Now millions of people know. And once people know the truth, you can't make them unknow it. You can't hide it again. The truth is out there. And it's going to change everything." After the interview, James disappeared. No one heard from him again. Theories emerged. Some people believed he was in witness protection. Some believed he had been killed to prevent future revelations. Some believed he had simply chosen to live, quiet life away from attention. What we do know is that his words had an impact. Global governments reluctantly began releasing more information. Scientists formed international committees to study the artifacts. Educational institutions incorporated the reality of extraterrestrial contact into their curricula. The world James had hidden from for 5 years had finally caught up to the truth he had been protecting. 10 years after James first found that object in the desert, humanity had adapted to living in a universe where we knew we weren't alone. It wasn't easy. Religions struggled with the theological implications. Governments struggled with the power dynamics. Scientists struggled with understanding technology that was vastly more advanced than our own. But humanity adapted, because that's what humans do. The objects themselves remained mysterious despite intense study. Scientists could measure them. They could photograph them. They could analyze their composition. But they couldn't operate them. The technology was simply too advanced. It was like giving a prehistoric human a smartphone and expecting them to understand how it worked. However, Researchers did discover something remarkable. The patterns on the objects were mathematical. Universal mathematics. The sequences were actually instructions, not for operating the technology, but for understanding the basic principles behind it. Teams of physicists and mathematicians began decoding these instructions. It took years, but gradually, they started to understand. The technology operated on principles of physics that humanity was only beginning to discover. Quantum mechanics, string theory, dimensions beyond the three spatial dimensions we perceive. The objects weren't designed for Earth. They weren't designed for humans. They were designed as universal communication devices, left by a civilization that understood that eventually any intelligent species would reach a certain level of technological development. And at that point, they would be ready to know the truth. That civilization had visited Earth. Thousands of years ago, they had left these devices as proof, as a message saying, "We were here, and one day, when you're ready, we'll come back." Humanity suddenly understood something profound. We weren't discovered by aliens. We were waiting. We had always been waiting. And now the waiting was over. James's story became legendary. Even though no one knew where he was or whether he was still alive, his name became synonymous with truth-telling, with courage, with putting humanity's future above personal safety. Universities began offering scholarships in his name. Books were written about his experience. Documentaries were produced. Movies were made. He became a symbol of what one ordinary person could accomplish by choosing truth. But the real question remained unanswered. The question that kept scientists and philosophers awake at night. If this advanced civilization left these devices here thousands of years ago, if they said they would come back, then where are they now? Are they watching? Are they waiting for us to reach a certain point in our development? Are they out there in the universe observing us? And most importantly, what happens when they finally do return? That's the mystery that James unwittingly started. A mystery that will define humanity's future. A mystery that will determine whether we survive as a species, or whether we become something completely different. The mechanic who just wanted to understand metal had opened a door that could never be closed. And on the other side of that door was the infinite universe. Waiting, watching, ready to reveal secrets that would change everything forever. Here's what most people don't realize about James's story. 6 months after his final interview, a second discovery was made. In the same desert, 30 miles from the original location, another object was found. Then another. Then another. Within 2 years, 7 identical objects had been discovered in North America alone. Scientists found similar objects in Russia, in Australia, in the Middle East. They were distributed across the planet, not randomly, but with mathematical precision, like they had been strategically placed. That's when governments made decision they had kept secret from the public. These objects weren't ancient. Carbon dating was wrong. Isotope analysis proved these objects were only 50 years old. Someone was placing them deliberately. Someone wanted humanity to find them. Someone was preparing us for something. James's courage didn't just reveal the past. It exposed the present, and possibly the future. So here's what you just learned. An ordinary mechanic found something extraordinary. He chose to tell the truth, even though it cost him everything. His story changed the world, and the mystery he uncovered still hasn't been fully solved. The takeaways are simple. First, one person can make a difference. James wasn't a scientist. He wasn't a politician. He was a mechanic. But he changed human history. Second, the truth matters more than safety, more than comfort, more than control. Third, we are not alone in this universe. And that changes everything about how we should be living right now. If this story opened your eyes, please hit that subscribe button. There are hundreds of incredible stories like this one. Stories about discovery. Stories about courage. Stories about what happens when ordinary people refuse to stay silent. Drop a comment below. What do you think happened to James? Where do you think these objects came from? Do you think the advanced civilization is still watching us? And if you want to go even deeper into stories about first contact, advanced civilizations, and humanity's future, join our exclusive community. We have daily updates, research documents, and community discussions about what's coming next. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.